I like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, just like this guy, who also likes JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. But unlike this guy, I don't like part one. It's bad, and I'm gonna review it and tell you why. You can skip it if you want to, even though people say you can't. You can, if you want to. So, yeah, epic time. I'll also subscribe, because, like, it's mean if you don't, and, like, I'm a little boy, so you want to be nice to small people. So anyway, characters, right? In part one, you got the good guy, Johnny, who's good, and he's not bad, and he's like nice to people. And then you got the bad guy, he's Dio, he's mean, grrr. So yeah, that's about it. You have Zeppeli, who dies and teaches him things. Spoilers, by the way. Probably should have said that. It doesn't matter, because you should skip it anyway, so it doesn't matter if I spoil it. Yeah, you have Zeppeli, who's like, oh, I'm gonna teach you stuff, and then he does. And then you have Speedwagon, who's the esports commentator, which is very important to the plot. Speaking of the plot, you also have the plot, which is Dio's a bad guy who needed to kill Dio before he takes over the world or whatever. I don't remember. I don't actually remember what Dio was trying to do. But that just means it's not interesting, because I forgot it. Good things don't make me forget things. So, yeah. In other parts, you have, like, more interesting plots than like, oh, let's beat the bad guy. You have in part three, oh, we need to save my mother. In part four, oh, we have to find the serial killer. In part five, we have to take down the Italian mafia. In part six is like weird and it doesn't have a straightforward plot, but it's still good. And it kind of jumps between things. Part seven, you have, oh, we need to win the race and get the thing. Part eight, oh, I need to figure out who I am and stuff, but not in like the weird way, cause like the amnesia way. So yeah, the biggest problem with part one though is probably the pacing, cause it's boring and slow, and nothing really happens. But it's not like part three, where nothing happens, but the fights are interesting. Nothing happens, but there's no stands, so the fights aren't very interesting, and they don't punch things well. And they like punch things, and it's like bam, bam, wow, I punched you. But with sun, I can sun breathe. I'm like Tanjiro, even though Jojo came out first with that, I don't care. Lots of people say to skip JoJo's part 1 and 2, because part 3 is when things really start. But don't do that. Don't do that. I'm telling you right now, don't do that. Because part 2 is actually really good. I mean, part 2 is so good. It's good. You should watch part 2. Don't skip part 1 and 2. Skip part 1 and then not part 2, because like part 1's bad and part 2's good. Part 2's like really good. Even though part 2 has like some of the same problems as part 1, where it's more just, oh, we need to beat the bad guy. There's more interesting things going on around that, like the stuff with the stone and all the stone masks, and the pillar men are just more interesting than a vampire, because it's more creative than a vampire. Pillar men. You don't see pillar men in like Dracula, but you see a vampire Dracula. So, that's more epic. JoJo's part 1 is the worst JoJo's part, by far. Like, it's not even a competition. All the other parts are good. Part 1 just has nothing going for it. It's not even bizarre. It doesn't even live up to the name. Like, all the other parts, they're definitely bizarre. I really don't understand why people are so mad about people skipping part 1. You don't miss out on that much, and it's like a big barrier to entry to get into JoJo's, because, it's slow, it's boring, it doesn't live up to its name, it's just a normal, boring, generic story about the medieval days. The real only reason I can see you not wanting to skip part 1, if you're having trouble getting through it, if you're enjoying part 1, that's great. You're a psychopath, but that's great. is that you might think that you'll miss stuff if you don't watch through all of part one. And that's kind of true, but I mean, I think the next parts kind of might still hit the same. I didn't skip part one, so I don't know if they do still have the same impact. But in case they don't, you're gonna be a little confused for the next two parts. Part four and stuff, you're gonna have no trouble. Jonathan is not important at all in any of those parts. But if that's the case and you don't want to be confused,